We should have done it a lot earlier. And as I, again, bore on relentlessly, if we'd given Ukraine the weapons it needed at the beginning of the war, there wouldn't be a war now. We've sort of drip-fed money and weapons into Ukraine, and hundreds of thousands of people are killed and maimed and traumatized as a result. So we shouldn't take any credit really for the fact we're now doing more than we used to.
Now, as I said, the Kremlin has warned the UK it will face consequences after British drones were used for Ukrainian attacks deep within Russia for the first time. The Russian embassy in London accused Britain of acting as an accomplice and co-perpetrator of the bloody crimes and terrorist attacks committed by Ukrainian neo-Nazis. It said the more involved the UK becomes, the higher the price it will pay. Well, I'm joined now by the Times columnist and Russia expert Edward Lucas. Hello, Edward.
Hello there.
Thanks for being with us. So, look, will Britain have given Ukraine explicit permission to use these drones within Russia, as opposed to within Russian-occupied Ukraine?
I think those caveats have been dropped some time ago. At the beginning of the war, we were sending rather limited numbers of weapons and applying very strict rules to how they could be used. And I think the gloves are off now, not least because we've seen so many Russian stunts and other forms of misbehavior here in Britain. And I think that when you give the Ukrainians weapons, you expect them to use them as effectively as possible, and that's what they've done.
With the caveats having been removed, though, does that mean would we necessarily even have known about it? Would there be some agreement where they said, if we're going to use your drones to attack the Russian mainland, we will tell you? Or is this something we only find out about when it happens?
Well, I suspect that at a sort of deep and secret level, we are pretty heavily involved in the targeting of these drones. You don't just sort of hurl them into the air like fireworks. The aim is to make sure they do the absolute maximum damage. And the American targeting information, I think, has been slowing down a bit because of the Trump administration's general sort of dithering and uselessness on this. And I get the impression that Britain and France have been stepping up their efforts to use our satellites and other information to make sure that the Ukrainians get the absolute most effective bang for every missile that they send over.
Sure. So, look, Russia warning now of consequences for this sort of thing. Is that significant, or is this just the kind of thing we can expect Russia to say that Russia always says?
Well, and Russia's obviously said this before. They've said it at the beginning of the war. They said it when we were sending our Challenger tanks. They said it when we were sending Storm Shadow missiles. I think the difference is perhaps now that most of what Ukraine is doing is made in Ukraine stuff. And there are some sort of specialist capabilities that they need from us, chiefly air defences, which, of course, we can't send them because we don't have any ourselves. But I think Russia's always tried to fight this, not just as a war on the battlefield, but as an information war. And the aim is to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt, to play divide and rule, in the hope that Ukraine's Western backers will be either scared or bored or both, and will stop giving Ukraine the weapons it needs to win. I don't think this is going to work, but obviously it's a new government, and so this is the first time for Andy Burnham that he's had one of these alarming buff folders land on his desk with a list of nasty things that Russia can do to Britain if it wants.
I mean, we also know that there have been sort of increasing sort of Russian sabotage operations, increasing tensions in the North Sea and elsewhere, increasing fears about how they might be meddling with undersea cables, that sort of thing. Other, Russian boats coming through the channel, all that kind of stuff. Can we expect to see an uptick in all of that?
Well, we have seen an uptick already. And of course, one of the points that I bore on about relentlessly in my Times column is that we're not always told the truth about this, that the level of Russian aggression against this country is actually much higher than the public has been led to believe. So we have fires at our defence plants, some mysterious cyber attacks, other incidents of sabotage, the use of dirty money in our politics, intimidation of individuals. All these things are going on, and they're seen as sort of random dots that if they do appear in the news at all, it's just an isolated event, sometimes only making the local press. But I think that Russia's been cranking up this sub-threshold, as it's called, or sometimes hybrid aggression against Britain, testing all the time to see how do we respond, are we and how do we defend ourselves, and how do we deter this? And the answer is we don't really defend ourselves, and we don't really respond, and our deterrence rests very heavily on the idea that we're a nuclear power. But short of firing nuclear missiles, there's the mighty press release, the economic sanction, and the devastating tactic of expelling another Russian diplomat. And we've tried all three of those in different combinations at different extent, and they have not exactly left them trembling in the Kremlin.
Yeah, look, finally, Edward, I suppose I have to ask, is it worth it? Is it doing the job? Is it worthwhile allowing Ukraine to use these messages to strike deep into Russia? Is it really deterring Russia? Is it having a major impact on the course of the war?
Well, we should have done it a lot earlier. And as I, again, bore on relentlessly, if we'd given Ukraine the weapons it needed at the beginning of the war, there wouldn't be a war now. We've sort of drip-fed money and weapons into Ukraine, and hundreds of thousands of people are killed and maimed and traumatized as a result. So we shouldn't take any credit really for the fact we're now doing more than we used to. But it is absolutely worth it, because Russia will not stop until it's stopped. And if Russia can be defeated in Ukraine, that is a game changer. And if Russia is victorious in Ukraine, that means that Putin will be looking for other targets, not just to wipe Ukraine off the map, which he has said repeatedly he wants to do, but he'll be trying to attack NATO next. And in fact, I'd argue he's already attacking NATO, but the attacks will escalate because he wants to make a world that's safe for his regime to live in. And that means a world in which we are weak and divided.
Edward Lucas, thank you very much indeed. Ed is, of course, a Times columnist, and he may talk about himself boring on in his columns, but take it from me, they are never remotely boring. Thank you, Edward Lucas.